Hey everybody, I want to mix things up a little bit this week. I know I was going to talk about other things to use while you're out in the field, but we're going to change things up a little bit here. I want to talk about when you're out, what other forms of art could help improve your photography or your retouching, which to me is one part of the same whole. And the reason for me is I shoot in RAW format, which means things usually have to be retouched. One thing you will notice with the stuff we're going to talk about today, these photos weren't retouched. I want to talk about using a lithophane to help you with your ability to retouch photographs. So this will be very visual. There'll be a link in the description to the Life Hacks and Stuff website, which is my other podcast, which of course I encourage you to listen to. But anyway, that covers non-photography material. And I've been talking about lithophanes over there for quite a bit. And that's what we're going to use as the basis for what we talk about today. So I'll try to be descriptive of what you'll see, but take a pop over there and take a look at the lithophanes page, and you can see what I'm describing here. That said, a lithophane, as I've said before, is designed to be seen backlit. Our photographs are made to be seen front lit, right? And the colors and things are blended onto that two-dimensional space so that the inks will provide the color that we're looking for. With a lithophane, you have the ability of depth. So instead of being this flat surface that you're working from, there's depth to it. In that depth, you can blend different colors together so that when they're backlit or front lit, the light causes the colors to blend, right? So unlike if you're doing paints, for example, and you put your multiple paints together, you put some a dark red and into a amount of white to make it a richer pink color than you could find, or the way that the inks in a printer will mix to make the colors that your photograph had in it. Here, you're using that depth and the light to cause the blending because you're not mixing the stuff together. If you've seen a colorized print that looks like a photograph, which I've done a couple of those, that isn't, even though it's not very thick, a two-dimensional object. It's a three-dimensional object. It does not blend the colors together to create the color that you see. It can use it if it has that color in its collection of filament. But if it doesn't, if you don't have the proper green, for example, it's a lighter green because they only make one color of the green, then you can layer in a layer or two of black in there so that the light causes it to darken. And when I say a layer, obviously black is going to absorb a lot of light, so you have to be careful on how you use it. However, that's more on the technical side. But when you make a lithophane up, the light's either going to bounce in and reflect back, or it's going to come from the back. The lithophanes we're going to talk about here for helping our retouching are pure white, right? No color in there at all. And yet, when you look at a lithophane, it looks basically like nothing. And the reason for that is the exact reason why it's going to help you with retouching. Let me explain. With a lithophane, in order for the area to be dark, it has to be thick, right? If you were to put a piece of paper up in front of a window, light's just going to come through it. You put 2 pieces of paper, less light. 3, less light. 5, less light. 50, none. Because of that, by changing the depth of the filament and compared to the back of the image, the more filament there is, the darker it's going to look once it's backlit. However, our eyes see 3 dimensions, and when we look at that, because that's so much thicker than the rest of it, that's what our eye sees closest to us, and we see the exact opposite, almost a negative of what the final image is going to be. So let's take, for example, something simple like a black pen. When you make a lithophane out of that, that pen will be what you see because it's just the pen. It's black, right? So it's going to be the thickest part of the entire thing is going to be that pen, and what you print out on your lithophane, it's going to look an awful lot like the pen. When you hold it up to the light's not going to be able to get through that thing, and you're going to see the pen. But that's a black pen. What if it's a white pen? If it's a white pen, now it's reversed. Everything else is thick, except for the area where the pen is going to be. The more complex the image, now those are very, very simple images, and you'll have to go look to get how the detail comes out. But the more complex the image is, the more things between that white and black that there are, the more nuanced the distances are. And that's why when you look at it with your eye, and the really dark areas are really thick and closest to you, but when you look at a photograph, it looks the opposite. Your eyes see darkness as being further away from you and lightness as being closer to you. And that's why I said it's kind of like a negative, because what you've done is created something that is the reverse of what your eye is going to see. That darkness is going to look further away. That's why when you look at somebody who has ripped muscles, for example, they look like the curves of the six-pack, for want of a better term, are further away from you because of the shadow. And they are further away from you, right? But here, if you have, for example, a tree, parts of that tree are going to be darker than other parts of the tree, and they're going to have different depths from the back of the lithophane. But it's not going to look like a tree until it's backlit. And then you'll see it. And now you're probably wondering, we've gone down this long path. What does this have to do with retouching? What did I say about a six-pack? The darker areas are going to look further away. So when I retouch a bodybuilder, for example, I will make sure that I go through and touch up those areas to make them darker, to bring into that two-dimensional object a third dimension as far as what your eye sees. It's still a two-dimensional object. I didn't change that. I didn't make the print thicker like I can with a 3D print. But the eye will see it further away because it's darker. And you're saying to yourself, well, I shoot portraits. Why do I care? If you darken around the shape of the face, watch it become pulled closer to you. If you darken around the eyes, and I'm not saying to make the eyes dark, right? We're just making subtle changes. you can make the eyes pop out because the eyes will seem like they're in another dimension. Same thing with the nose, right? Everything that you lighten, and this is where dodge and burn comes in, everything that you lighten will look closer to the viewer, and everything you darken will look further away. So if you go around the outside edge of the nose, you'll pull the nose out of the face more, out of that 2 dimensions. If you work with the Cupid's bow, making the raised edges a little bit lighter, like 2%, 5%, and the inner part of it a little bit darker, again, 2 to 5%, you will change the way the photograph looks. And you won't necessarily notice it while you're making the change. And the most critical part about doing this is making sure that you turn it on and turn it off as you work. All right, so you create a layer, you've got the layer in there, you're doing the retouching, turn it on, turn it off, because what can happen is you can get so used to seeing nothing that you don't notice that you've made the change. And the changes that you make when you're doing a retouch is subtle. And if you look at a 3D lithophane, the changes can be pretty subtle in there. One's just a little bit darker than the other, so it's a little bit thicker than the other. And we're talking 0.4 mils. So by looking at other things like a lithophane, you can find new ways to work on the stuff that you do and to make it pop, to give it something a little bit special that nobody else does. Does it take time? Oh, hell yes. It will take time. But it's going to set yourself apart, and it's going to give you, in my opinion, a better image, because it won't be that flat 2-dimensional image. You've actually brought life into that image. Now, there's nothing wrong with having, just cranking up the contrast a little bit to try to do some of that work when you've got a lot of images that you're doing. But if you're doing portraits, like if you're doing a wedding portrait, if you're doing a portrait of a person for their headshot, just take the extra time and go in there and give it that life. Give it that little extra bit that just sets it apart from everything else. That's what I got for you guys this week, and I will talk to you all next week.